I mean, you can understand finding the nests, you know, can't you, to some extent?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically they've got a compass in their head. And then on top of that, like in terms of migration, they have certain landmarks that they know to follow. They pass knowledge down from like parent to chick. Like there's so much knowledge being passed on. It's incredible. But I think also,
I mean, I've always, like with migration over long distances, like, you know, and they say that's with the stars they do that.
I know.
Stars.
Yeah, and it's that as well, yeah. And apparently
they're always going looking up, like.
I reckon so. I think they're going for a little stargaze at night. But on top of that, birds have a really good sense of smell, so they can like smell where they're going. Like like all of their senses they're using is just an incredible degree, and they know their home, same as us, I suppose.
I'm Sean Bean, and this is Get Birding in collaboration with Forest Holidays.
We're just beginning to be able to follow these amazing migration patterns. Centuries ago, we didn't know what happened to them. We thought swallows just went to the bottom of ponds for the winter.
In this episode, we're looking at migration, how and why birds travel, and what's happening overhead at this time of year.
The different formations that they are able to arrange themselves in, there's something really deeply complex happening in terms of their relationships to one another.
You'll hear from special guests, including fellow actor and RSPB ambassador Samuel West.
I just think it's extraordinary. I find it very moving that these tiny things make these huge journeys just to survive.
Nadia Shaikh.
For me to know the seasons, the plants, the birds, the trees, gives me a sense of belonging outside of state, nation, passport.
Joe Joseph.
This land that we're often birding on is land that was conquered and taken.
And broadcaster Johnny Vaughan.
They're like a bolt shot from nature's crossbow.
Alongside voices from the British Trust for Ornithology tracking cuckoos on their return from Africa.
It's not unusual for our cuckoos to do 10,000 miles round trip.
We'll also be keeping an eye out for one of the UK's most striking birds, the kingfisher.
It's amazing. They're such a show-stopping bird. My favourite.
And getting expert advice on what you lot need to be doing with your bird feeders come the 1st of May.
It's sad for us because we love feeding the birds. It's a way of connecting and engaging with nature. But at the same time, if it's causing them harm, it's got to be about them. We can still support birds, just got to change how we're doing it.
Do you ever choose your jobs because of the local wildlife? Because I've done 2 not very good films in South Africa. And I remember them principally for the pleasure of the bird watching on my days off.
I've done the same. Probably 3 not very good films. I think it's difficult when you're filming, though. I mean, because a big film crew comes and just colonises an area and makes a lot of noise and a lot of light. And you don't tend to take your binoculars on set with you, do you, really? I mean, probably a bit impolite, really, for a start.
I wish that was true. I wish that was true, Sean. I'm never without them. I'm never without them.
Yeah.
No, I'm afraid to. Mind you, I mean, on All Creatures Great and Small, it's a fairly small crew, and we're often outside. So, you know, if things are flying over, I keep them on my chair. Oh, you're very well behaved. I'm just impressed that you've been with you.
Samuel West is an actor, keen twitcher, and RSPB ambassador. You were in Sheffield, right? Artistic director, Cruise in the Sheffield Theatres. Yeah.
I was in fact, that's sort of how I started birding, because I found the job really difficult, and I was living, you know Sheffield. I was living in the west of the city, quite close to the Derbyshire border, and a lot of the time I couldn't sleep, so I used to just sort of get up and drive west and start walking, and I'd hear all these birds, none of which I knew by song. And I'd start thinking, I want to identify these things. And so I came out of the job. I don't know what the theatre was like when I was there. I mean, you know, I was looking after the 49 weeks, which wasn't the snooker.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also loved the snooker, so that was fun.
Yeah.
And it sort of kick-started something in me that was really about dealing with the stress of a difficult job, and how nice it was just to get out and forget my own human problems for a bit.
Declutter your brain and all this stuff, crap swirling around, isn't there? And it's just nice to get away and be still for a bit. And
you know, there's a brilliant quote from Iris Murdoch from one of her essays where she talks about having read some bad review of her work. And she goes out and she sees a kestrel. And suddenly she says, the world is all kestrel.
Yeah.
And when I get back to the thing I was worrying about, it seems less important.
Yeah.
She calls it unselfing, which is an amazing word, I think.
Yeah.
Just sort of getting out of yourself. It's really simple and it's cheap. You know, binoculars help, maybe a notebook.
Yeah.
But actually, all you really need is your eyes and your ears.
Yeah.
And a bit of patience.
And you're just looking up all the time, aren't you? Which is quite unusual these days, I suppose. For
Exactly.
Usually you're looking down at street signs or traffic, you know, but we kind of walk around and we're always looking up to see what's around, you know, even as we speak, we're looking around, you know.
I mean, I now realise that a bird can't cross my path without me trying to identify it.
Yeah, you have to go back and think, what? Oh, yeah.
That's just an illness now. I have to. You know, people say, "Do you watch birds?" I watch every bird, actually. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I find if I'm not starting on All Creatures very first thing, I sometimes get out by dawn to a place, you know, quite close to Harrogate, and I'm often by myself for the first hour. You know, I sometimes see one person walking a dog, and I just think, why doesn't everybody want to be up and about in this beautiful, beautiful morning? You know, you just look up and listen and chill out. It's a really important antidote to the world for me.
I can understand it when it's dark, like it was a few weeks ago, and it's dark, and you think, well, I can't really go. I'm just like a bit of a nut and walking around with a torch. Yeah, but when it gets light in the morning, it's like now. I woke up this morning and I just thought, because it changes, doesn't it, every day, and you think, God, that sound.
Emily Dickinson said, I hope you like birds. It saves going to heaven.
Really? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I just think if you know, they're all around you, especially the music, especially in spring. I find that extraordinary music that they make. You know, once that radio channel is on, I can never switch it off, and I never want to.
There's one
I just
here,
find
isn't there, now.
Yeah, it sounds like a robin. Yeah. I find walking through a wood and thinking, there's a cast of characters in this wood that I didn't know about before, and now I can identify them without knowing who they are, without having seen them.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we get swallows here, and they fly over, and there's a kind of folly, a little. It's like just an empty space, a folly. Yeah, it is a kind of. It's very pretty looking, but they just used to build their nests, you know, up in the corners. The mud, you know, bits of mud, build a mud nests, and they
go back to the same place, do they, each time?
Yeah. Cool. And when you think they come all the way from Africa, aren't they? Really?
I know. Yeah. I find that fascinating. I think the idea that we're just beginning to be able to follow these amazing migration patterns.
Yeah.
You know, and we didn't, you know, centuries ago we didn't know what happened to them. We thought that swallows just went to the bottom of ponds for the winter. Yeah. And now we know. We're learning so much more about it. I just think it's extraordinary. I find it very moving that these tiny things make these huge journeys just to survive.
Yeah, I mean the obstacles they face. I mean, apart from weather and stuff, and then you've got these like traps and all sorts of stuff, haven't you, to catch them with. I guess there's skills, you know, what kind of things you have in binoculars and this, that. But the main thing is that you're just learning all the time. And
you know, I want to know more about it. I find the patterns of migration extraordinary. I want to know more about where they go and why.
Spring marks a major moment in the bird calendar, as species begin arriving back home from their wintering grounds. Some have travelled thousands of miles, often returning to the exact same place each year.
It's not unusual for our cuckoos to do 10,000 miles round trip. That's probably about average, about 16,000 kilometres that they do. My name's Chris Hewson. I'm a senior research ecologist at the British Trust for Ornithology, where I've been working for the best part of 25 years. And I work mostly on the migration and ecology of Afro-Palearctic migratory birds, a lot of which centres around species such as cuckoos, nightingales and swifts that we've been tracking the migrations of in recent years. I think probably the most remarkable in terms of the distance travelled versus the size of the bird might be spotted flycatcher. And so birds from the UK are actually going to spend the winter down in northern Namibia and southern Angola mostly. And they take quite a big detour around West Africa, both in autumn and in spring to get there, sort of like bypassing as much of the Sahara as they can. It's well over 20,000 kilometres that these birds are actually travelling in a year. And this is a bird which weighs pretty much the same as a £1 coin. Many of our most sort of well-known and iconic species have undergone really substantial, in some cases massive, population declines in recent years. So things like not just cuckoos, but also swifts and nightingales that we've done a lot of work on, and spotted flycatchers that we've been focusing on recently. In some cases, we've lost 90% or more of those populations in the last half century. So trying to understand what the reasons for these population declines and therefore whether there's anything we can do to help their populations is a really important driving force behind this work. Obviously it's fascinating to follow their migrations, and it's the sort of thing that, if I wasn't working in the area, I would be on the internet watching just to see what would happen, be able to see individual birds doing what they do. In the case of nightingales, swifts and cuckoos, we've noticed that before they migrate, they seem to home in on different habitats. In some cases, not all birds, but some individuals are homing in on different habitats before they migrate, obviously to prepare for the migrations better than they could if they stayed on their breeding territory. And often these are wetter habitats. We know that in the case of the cuckoos, that birds which are late leaving the UK are more likely to die before they reach tropical Africa than those which are migrating earlier. And that's another piece of information which suggests to us that conditions here might be really important. So what we're looking at is, in the case of the nightingales, we're looking at using GPS tags, what the characteristics are of the breeding territories which lead to these birds moving to these wetter conditions before they migrate. And this will enable us to design habitat interventions or the landscape configuration of necessary habitats and good quality habitat, which will get these birds off to a head start, really. We know that the cuckoo and the swift are two species which haven't been able to advance their arrival back to the UK in line with earlier springs here. Birds which are migrating earlier are more likely to die than those which migrate late. And this is likely to be contributing to the population decline because the birds are basically having to take greater risks in order to get back here. I mean, this year has been quite early. I think we've had our earliest ever cuckoo back in the UK, I think, was the 7th of April this year. But unfortunately, that was at Ashok, the cuckoo. If people want to look on the website. But unfortunately, the timing of arrival in Suffolk actually coincided with a big drop in temperature. And so Ashok, not surprisingly, quite sensibly just turned around and went back to France. So it just goes to show the sort of risks that these birds are taking to try and get back here earlier, because the weather can be quite unpredictable and quite variable, particularly earlier on in the season. And actually, Ashok is one of only 3 out of the 8 cuckoos that we're tracking, which isn't back in the UK now. So being too early and experiencing these really cold and poor conditions when you're already probably pretty stressed yourself as a cuckoo, having just arrived back from Africa in the UK, can be quite a problem, because although Ashok saved his skin by going back to France, he's actually now one of the later cuckoos to arrive rather than being the first, which would have been a big objective for a male cuckoo.
Now, you've been sending in your birding questions, and Dr. Mya-Rose Craig is here to help answer them.
Why do some birds seem happy living right next to us in the cities, while others stay miles away? What birds do you associate with the city, apart from pigeons, obviously?
House sparrows. I miss hearing them around here, chirping away.
Yeah, because they're so noisy as well, aren't they?
Yeah. Another bird, mizzle thrush, which you never hardly see them anymore.
Are they? Yeah.
Quite large, like a song thrush, isn't it? But larger and majestical. But no.
Yeah, majestical, that's a good word.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, a bird that we don't really talk about in terms of the city, gulls. They're thriving out there. There are some gull species that are doing better in the city than in their natural habitat now. Yeah. But I feel like the common thread between all of these birds is basically how able to get food they are in the city, and if there are places for them to roost and to breed. And like those are kind of the two things that decide whether a bird's going to be able to live somewhere. That's it really. But I feel like gulls are such an interesting example of it, because they normally would live on like cliff sides and on islands, and where they breed is like basically flat places, which is exactly the same as roofs on the top of buildings in the city. So it's like they've ended up with this massive artificial habitat that's actually kind of perfect for them. And I guess same with pigeons, which are cliff birds, and peregrines even also cliff nesting. So I feel like birds where they're already adapted to living in the city. If they can live there, they do really want to.
Food, like, isn't it? Like, oh, you shoot butter.
When people live in the city and they're like, oh, I never see any birds, I don't know where to start with bird watching. I'm like, how about you start trying to ID the species of gulls that are trying to nick your chips? Because I guarantee you there'll be like 4 or 5 species in there.
They don't count. Of course, different species. You all think they're herring gulls or whatever. We all think they're the same, don't they?
Yeah, you've got your lesser great black bat, your greater black bat, your black-headed gull. Like, there's a lot going on in there. There's more biodiversity than we think right outside the chip shop.
Yeah. Feeding birds brings us closer to nature, but new research from the RSPB shows it can also spread disease. So, the advice is changing. Feed safely and feed seasonally. Here's one of our Get Birding experts to explain more.
My name is Megan McCubbin and I'm an RSPB ambassador. And if you've been looking into the news, you'll have noticed recently that there are new updated guidelines from the RSPB detailing and asking us to change the way we're feeding the birds. Now, this comes, I think, as a bit of a shock to most people. It's a bit of a surprise. It's something I've personally done since I was a child. So to have this massive change feels like quite a big deal. But when you look at the data and the science that has come out of a lot of research, it's really clear why. So what the RSPB are now asking is that we remove our bird feeders with seeds and nuts from May the 1st to the 31st of October. And that's all because of quite a new disease, a protozoan parasite called trichomoniasis. It's a really nasty disease. It creates lesions in the back of the throats for lots of birds. It's known in doves, pigeons, even birds of prey. But in 2005, it became really prevalent in our finches. So they've declined about 60% in the last few years, which is a shocking statistic, and it is down to trichomoniasis. And it's really prevalent in the summer. It's spread when birds share food or water, but seeds and nuts especially, because you know how birds pick up a seed and they'll weigh it in their bill to decide if the time taken to eat it is going to be worth the nutritional value of that seed. So a lot of birds, you watch it if you watch your feeders closely, they'll pick up a seed and they'll drop it to the floor. And finches love to come and feed on the floor, which is one of the reasons why they're struggling so much with the disease, because they're changing saliva with multiple birds. It doesn't survive long outside the body. It can desiccate, this parasite, and dry up. So in the winter months when the temperatures are colder, trichomoniasis struggles to survive. So just while the disease is incredibly prevalent, it's one of these things that is sad for us because we love feeding the birds. It's a way of connecting and engaging with nature. But at the same time, if it's causing them harm, it's got to be about them. What we can do, though, in the summer months is we can occasionally scatter feed mealworms. Mealworms are a great source of protein for birds, but move it around. So if you do it in one area of your garden 1 week, perhaps if you do it the following week, change the location of where those mealworms are. You can also occasionally put out fat balls. Fat balls are, again, a great source of energy, great for the winter, but also sometimes in the spring when they're going through breeding. I might still put mine out occasionally, maybe once every week or 2 weeks. And the key thing is we make sure that if we see a bird that looks unwell, and the way to tell if a bird has trichomoniasis is they often look like they've got fluffed up feathers. Sometimes they look wet around the bill. There can be food stuck to their bill, and they're really lethargic. So they're often really sleepy. You can get much closer to a bird with trichomoniasis than if it didn't have it, because they stay on the ground and they don't look very well at all. But they're actually, unfortunately, they can't keep food down. So whilst they look fluffed up, they're actually not getting enough nutrients in their body, which is why most of them die of starvation. But if you see one that doesn't look well, remove the food immediately, give it a break, wait for a few months before putting it back out again. There's all things we can do. We haven't been doing it wrong. We just need to adapt the way that we're feeding the birds and change how we look after them. We can still look after them in so many ways. We could plant seeds into our garden that create amazing life for pollinators that birds love to feed on. We can create natural food sources that bring birds into our garden in a different way. That's a fantastic alternative to do that benefits not just birds, but all wildlife.
If you love birdwatching, why not join the flock, our Get Birding Members Club? Enjoy exclusive content, latest birding news, ad-free episodes, and access to community chat rooms to share tips, spots, and more with birdies around the world. Go to our website, getbird.ing.
How long you lived here?
About 10 years, yeah. 10 years, just February, last month, 10 years, yeah.
And this is where you watch birds. I say this because in my RSPB pocket guide to British birds, it says the logical place to start watching birds is your garden.
Does it?
Yeah.
God.
And what the next tip is?
Yeah.
Wear something drab.
Yeah. Like we are. Johnny Vaughan is a TV and radio presenter and big-time birder.
Last summer I went down to one of the estuaries in Essex where they'd apparently seen some turtle doves. So I thought, well, I'll go along there. We'll go and have a little look. Oh. And I waited for a whole afternoon. It was just getting near tea time. And then there it is, just like there.
I've never seen one of them.
And well, it's like they're like a tiny, like a really neat toy pigeon almost.
Yeah.
But more of a flash on them, and they're just beautiful.
Yeah.
I went to Sardinia that summer. There's just loads of them. You know, So but that's another thing about bird watching is that context.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, when you see everyone suddenly go off to some island in Scotland, off the coast of Scotland, because they've this bird that's landed that's actually very common somewhere, but it's also context, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's like sparrows. You know, when you live here, we don't see any house sparrows or starlings.
Yeah,
because it's rural and they're not really attracted to that. They're more attracted to people in cities and housing estates and stuff like that. And so if I see one here, I'm like, oh. Whoa!
Yeah, right.
You always say, house sparrow. You know what I mean? Shh, house sparrow.
What have you seen that's a good spot in this garden?
So an egret, a white egret,
you see a white
over
egret?
there, on the pond.
Because it likes the pond.
Yeah. Only rarely, and a kingfisher.
Do you get?
Only twice.
No, I've only seen two in my life.
Yeah.
And you remember them. It's like they're like a bolt shot from nature's crossbow.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. They're such a show-stopping bird. My favourite.
Yeah.
They're my favourite. I've seen them twice. I remember both times. Once I was fishing for trout on the test, and I was just sort of contemplating why I could see these fish and they weren't biting. I was thinking, and I just sort of sat back, cheesed off. Well, actually, fun enough to have a sandwich. Yeah. And suddenly just boom, literally about that far above the water, just
totally still, and then just like a rocket into
and that
flash
like
of orange and
God, man,
it's quite a sight, isn't it? Something that you always remember. Everybody remembers seeing a kingfisher if they've
ever seen one.
Yeah. Kingfishers are tiny flashes of colour along our rivers. Bright blue on top and warm orange below. That brilliant blue isn't paint or pigment. It comes from the way the light bounces off the structure of their feathers. They're so still and
they just
so they
flash,
must have something about
they
it.
just flash. Isn't it? It's like the Lambo of the. But it is. It's it's weird. They're so sudden and beautiful, and like always from out of the blue.
Yeah.
That you really do need processing time. You sort of to sink in.
I've just seen that. Yeah.
You think,
it is.
That was a kingfisher.
While birds move freely across landscapes, for people, it's not always that simple.
I didn't really know bird watchers were a thing when I was looking at birds. No concept that other people thought the same way about birds. because my whole entire upbringing was being around adults and people who didn't care.
Not everyone feels that same sense of belonging in the outdoors, or has the same access to it.
So in England, we only have access to 8% of land. 92% of England is off limits. And there's only access to 3% of inland waters uncontested.
Nadia Shaikh is a naturalist and conservationist.
I remember rescuing a bird from the underneath of a hedge, and it was trapped in something when I was very, very tiny, and releasing it.
She's devoted her life to repairing our relationship with nature.
As a mixed race person and coming from a working class background, working in the conservation sector, which is very white and middle class, there's something around like being determined to exist within this space and exist within this work. And it comes down to belonging and land.
She joined Right to Roam after 14 years in the nature conservation sector.
So the Right to Roam campaign, which I currently campaign with, talk the injustice of land access and who owns England. 1% of the population still owns more than 50% of England. A third of England is owned by the aristocracy. So, we have some of the worst biodiversity in the world in England, certainly the worst in Europe, and also some of the worst land access. We've still got 102 constituencies in England with no access land. That's a lot of people in England with absolutely no right to access. And we know from studies that the most important nature to anyone is the nature close to your front door. When you're in crisis or when you need a bit of peace, the most important nature for anyone's mental health is where you can get to rapid.
Since 2021, Right to Roam has been organising peaceful, lawful walks into parts of the countryside that most people rarely see. Huge swathes of land currently closed to the public.
Our nature is being directly impacted by landowners, right? And so, rightly or wrongly, whether it's farmers that have been incentivised to do things which aren't necessarily good, ultimately it comes down to who owns the land and our behaviour around property. If you own it, you have a right to exclude people and you have a right to destroy the nature on it. That's the system that we live under.
Their vision is simple and powerful. A future countryside where people don't just benefit from the physical, mental and spiritual nourishment of wild places, but become their guardians too.
When it comes to wildlife, it's one of the bits of critique we get quite back is like, well, if people can go anywhere, then it's going to destroy wildlife. In fact, the opposite. Where people access nature is where it is defended the most. The River Wye is one of only 3% of rivers in England that has regular access. So it's also got one of the biggest river protection campaigns going. So a lot of the river movement that we hear about now in terms of understanding its pollution has been built around the River Wye campaigners. Why? Because they had a right of accessing it. So they could see when it was full of pollution. It's tied in with so many social rights and social justices and human rights. It's like we actually ought to have a right to a safe home, healthy food, and a clean environment that you can access. These really should be basic. But actually, I think what we're starting to recognise is, in the system that we live in, they're not even a given.
Standing up for nature as passionately as they enjoy it.
Every single person you meet has the ability to fall in love with nature and care for it if they are given fundamental rights, which is it is your right to walk in that field. But that has to come with responsibility. So as with Scotland has a right to roam or right of responsible access, though you only have that right if you follow the Scottish Outdoor Access Code. So it is a culture of rights based on responsibility. We want the same for England. You have the right to be on this land, get to know for it, care for it and love it, but you must be responsible at the same time as part of a mutual understanding that I've got your back, you've got mine. That's the culture shift that we need to be moving towards for the benefit of wildlife, because it is disappearing in 92% of the landscape and nobody's there to witness it.
We spend a lot of time critiquing, and that is so important. It's really important to have a critical lens into the world around us. However, it's also important to imagine. Because one of the things that we've really lost touch with as a society, a global society, I would argue, is our capacity to actually envision futures that look different from the ones in which we are living.
Joe Joseph is a birding instructor.
When I first started birding, I really felt like an outsider. I mean, I'm coming from a immigrant background. I'm queer. I'm neurodivergent. So for me, I really viewed birding as something that I could aspire to, but probably would never feel confident enough to be a teacher in, until I was selected to be part of a fellowship called Birding for Everyone, which is run by the Golden Gate Bird Alliance, which is a really prominent nonprofit here in the Bay Area. And so I teach a class called Decolonizing Birding. Essentially, the class is a response to this concept of colonial logic, that there are ways that we think and relate to the world around us that are very much shaped by histories of colonization. And I would argue that birding is, in fact, also wrapped up in that history. I lead this activity in class where we go out into the field and we find birds together, which is at its core what birding is about, right? And then we look at those birds, and let's just take one for example. There's a really beautiful bird called the Stellar's jay that we have here in California. And the first thing we do is we talk about what's the name of this bird and what does this language indicate? And so when we think about a lot of birds, so the Stellar's jay, the Anna's hummingbird, the Townsend's warbler, my sparkbird, all of these birds have something in common, right? Which is that they have the name of an individual, an apostrophe S, and then the kind of general family of bird that they belong to. If we understand that apostrophe S to be an indication of ownership and possession, what does that say? That in the natural world, when we look at birds, we are replicating that kind of relationship to nature every time we name the bird, right? And so what we end up doing is we walk around and we take inspiration from other communities, particularly indigenous communities, who are naming these birds based on bird sounds, the sounds that they make, on the way that they look, right? And so we come together in these spaces and we come up with new names that become kind of like our own vocabulary that just exists within the container of the class. So my favorite example of this is the Stellar's jay is this beautiful bird with a really big crest, and it just kind of looks like a punk rock artist of some kind. And one of my students came up with the name Blue Thunder, right? And I think there's also an element of really thinking about how these names evoke an emotional connection to the bird. And that's what I think oftentimes is missing in conventional birding practice is we focus so heavily on categorization, on identification, on essentially this very harsh distinction between subject as viewer and object as what is being viewed. And I think when we challenge and we come up with new names and we work together to kind of establish new vocabularies, then we're actually doing that work of building relationships to these animals, building relationships to the outdoors, which ultimately does inspire political action to protect and to be in better relationship with the world around us. It is also a call to respect the sovereignty of indigenous peoples and the fact that this land that we're often birding on is land that was conquered and taken. And what does it mean to actually sit and wrestle with that discomfort and sit in the complexity of what it means to love the world around you and to love the outdoors and to also understand the history that's very deeply tied to the land and the way the land was treated and who it was stolen from and who it quote unquote belongs to.
Birds of Passage by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Black shadows fall from the lindens tall that lift aloft their massive wall against the southern sky. and from the realms of the shadowy elms, a tide-like darkness overwhelms the fields that round us lie. But the night is fair, and everywhere a warm, soft vapour fills the air, and distant sounds seem near, and above, in the light of the starlit night, swift birds of passage wing their flight. That's all for this episode. Thanks for coming along with us today, and I'll see you in a fortnight, birdies. Get Birding was produced by Hannah Walker-Brown. The executive producer is Jane Gerber. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This is a Get Birding production in collaboration with Forest Holidays.